Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I want to talk about hyping my videos, which is the new thing. I'm going to have this introduction on a number of my videos moving forward until I get tired of doing it. And I can't hype videos. I can't hype them on my browser. I don't know if you can hype them on your browser, and I can't hype them on my phone. I tried my channel, of course. I wasn't signed into my channel. I was signed into another channel of mine. And so I was like, well, maybe they won't let me hype my own videos. But then I went to other videos that would qualify, and there's no hype button. I don't have a hype button. But here's the hype button here. You scroll over. You have to scroll over when you're watching a video. And so I found a video talking about hype buttons because I can't find a hype button. They won't let me hype. But they may let you hype, and if you can hype, please hype my videos. Let's just see if this does anything. I don't think it will, but, let's just do the experiment together. Well, you do the experiment, and we'll see if it changes anything. But you find it here. You have to scroll over from this thing here, the original stuff here, the likes, and then you scroll over here to hype. I can just mute this and it'll scroll over. And as you scroll over, it goes to hype here at some point. There we go. And then the hype button becomes apparent. So there it is, the hype button. And then this happens. It gets, I don't get to experience this wonderful star. But I don't know whether they do it just based on views, right? Because if they do it based on views, then you're fucked. So, there's a lot of mysteries about the hype button. But anyways, hype the shit out of my videos. That's the smash that hype button and see what happens. All right, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This has a lot to do with, I'm going to get back to some Don Lemon stuff because that's still very entertaining. But this beginning of the video is going to have to do with RFK Jr. Cassidy, Pfizer CEO. Trump worthy of a Nobel Prize for a COVID vaccine. Operation Warp Speed. Senator Bill Cassidy and Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla on Wednesday said President Trump deserved a Nobel Peace Prize for rapidly distributing the COVID vaccine during the pandemic. They're really pushing that, right? So Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, he's just there, and everybody who is pandering to him wants something from him because, that's how it works. But Pfizer is, emerging with Trump at the same time RFK Jr. went to Capitol Hill, and they gave him a fucking massive grilling. I only watched little bits of it, but I have a bunch of highlight videos that came up yesterday. And let's get into it. Let's just show the things here. So, I don't know. There's a lot of liberals that still like Kennedy. And there's a lot of liberals who have had health issues. The alternative health stuff came out of the liberal community, right? You didn't see right-wing Republicans and, redneck people, Trump supporters, going to Whole Foods and, natural co-op markets and buying herbs. And, some of them did, right? It's like, there's some people who are, it's something beyond politics. There's people out there who know about natural health and natural food and organic stuff and farmers. And some of them are more right-wing kind of people. But a lot of it is liberals. Liberals started this whole thing. And there are a lot of liberals who want, they know about seed oils and they know about this stuff. And I don't know what the breakdown is politically. But the ones who have, who are sick and have sick kids are people who know about what's happened here. So, but, this is supposed to be a very liberal person, Elizabeth Warren. But, she's owned by Big Pharma, and there's a lot of yelling.
Mr. Secretary, I agree with a lot of my colleagues' statement. I actually had hoped, I didn't support you. I I thought taking on chronic illnesses was going to be important. I've got 2 kids, as we discussed when we met, that have chronic illnesses.
Yeah, you've always looked like shit. They've changed their player here. YouTube has. Their player now has different. Anyways, look at this guy. Like, this guy's looked like this for years. Like, whatever's going on with him.
I'm not sure that the focus on red dye and seed oils are going to fully solve that problem.
Of course they won't.
I would say.
Okay, so, the thing about it is, RFK Jr., when he first came out and gave interviews, he was the best politician I've ever seen at being able to articulate certain aspects of the truth or narratives. Like, there's people like Trump who flirted with the truth community, but they didn't really know truth or stuff. And Kennedy, I don't know if he knew how much he knew about truth or stuff, but it's stuff that he had come to similar conclusions on. In terms of a politician, he was the best you were going to get. That was going to articulate the truth or, he was supposed to be a good debater and all these things. Then it just came out about the way he pandered to Israel and his cheating on his wife who committed suicide, and keeping a diary about it, and his, heroin addiction. He had a lot of, he's a desperate guy. He's, fucked up, right? So, it became clear that he wasn't going to be anything. And of course he wasn't. But he, there was this movement, and there was the Casey and Kelly Means who, seem like they could be compromised, but they say good things about healthcare, right? And, red dye and seed oil, if you remove those 2 things, if you removed a number of these things from people's diets, there would be, and if you got rid of all of it, then the cancer and chronic disease would be reduced. But you'd also have to look in and do real research on Wi-Fi and these electromagnetic waves that are having an effect. But those are the things that are causing chronic health. And people not living good, healthy lives, not getting vitamin D, not being outside, not exercising, these kids spending way too much time on the internet in their homes. There's lots of things. There was, right before COVID, there was an article that said young people between the ages of 18 and whatever, 40-something, 30-something, I don't know what it was, were suffering, a third of them, half of them had at least one chronic illness, and a third of them had 2. And I talked about this, and I got a number of comments from people in this age demographic, which isn't probably my audience, is probably mostly older people. But the people, the young people are like, yeah, I have this and this and this. All these young people are saying they had this. And then, of course, COVID kicked in. And, COVID's been forgotten. The truth community has a short memory. The COVID and the vaccine things are now no longer important to people who don't have some kind of, injury and whatever. People have moved on from what happened with COVID. But all these things are, was an epic failure of the CDC. It was an epic failure of the medical community. And they never have addressed the primary issues that are poisons in our food and then all the side effects and poisons in our medicine, right? And so him saying that that's not going to get rid of chronic illness, he's trying to say that the medical community with their fucking bullshit pharmaceutical drugs, which everybody knows cause side effects because they fucking tell you they have to. And so these guys are all owned by Big Pharma. And it was funny watching them, like these little clips here.
That seems where your emphasis is. I want to go back to just, again, some basic facts. Do you accept the fact that 1 million Americans died from COVID?
I don't know how many died.
You're the Secretary of Health and Human Services. You don't have any idea how many Americans died from COVID?
I don't think anybody knows that because there was so much data chaos coming out of the CDC, and there were so many perverse incentives. And these are model
You don't know the answer of how many Americans died from COVID. This is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Do you think the vaccine did anything to prevent additional deaths?
Again, I would like to see the data and talk about the data.
You have had this job for 8 months, and you don't know the data about whether the vaccine saved
and
lives?
that's the problem, is that they didn't have the data. The data by the Biden administration, absolutely dismal.
So who is politicizing? You're saying the Biden administration politicized all the data? Go back to what Senator Cantwell just said.
They fired Dr.
Go to
Krause.
the Trump Surgeon General.
They fired Dr. Krause. They fired all the people who questioned the orthodoxy. They fired Dr. Gruber, Dr. Krause,
So,
Martin
Mr. Chairman, the
Kilgore.
Secretary of Health and Human Services doesn't know matter how many Americans died from COVID. Doesn't know if the vaccine helped prevent any death.
Okay. So this guy is a real piece of shit. So there's a lot of yelling. These guys all got aggressive because they're all big pharma. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years when Trump has been, denuded by the midterm elections. And I don't know if Pfizer's trying to get some kind of deal with Trump about whatever's going on with Kennedy and this thing. But, we all kind of know the data was not accurate. They lied over and over again. And they said things about the vaccine that weren't correct. Joe Biden came out and said, and it was, I'll do my whole thing about it, the montage of this stuff. But they said all these things that were not correct about them. And then the masks on top of it. They're things that were just, they said things and then turned out to be wrong completely. And they knew they were wrong going in, or they knew there was no science to back it. And they got away with it. Like, this is just, some people know and some people don't. Right? Like, that's what almost everything, some people know, some people don't. That's pretty much every one of these things. Like, some people are able to accept the truth and some aren't. And that's what this is. It's just levels of that. Like, it's just how much you're willing to accept or see or do research on. Like, it's one thing to say everything that they say is a lie, which is, partially true. But it's not. It's lazy. It's not. It's not going to, if you're looking for these things, like, this stuff here is more important because you have to figure out what's poisoning you and what's really hurting you in your diet and your, lifestyle and things like this. Like, you have to get to the bottom of the things that are really hurting you. If you're a young person, you have chronic illnesses and it just keeps on mounting, my wife was talking about someone she knows, a guy my age, and he's about to lose his health insurance because, he's been AI'd out of existence. Some guy was, in the poor health range, and the guy's on all these medications, and he's going for an MRI this week, this kind of stuff. And, like, if you start going to the medical community, the allopathic medical community, chances are, sometimes you have to go. I'm not saying people shouldn't go. I'm not telling people what to do. But once you're in that, you're in that cycle where they start giving you medications, then you're just getting one more condition after another because these medications all come with side effects and they keep you chronically ill. And then you can't get off any of these things because your body needs them because they're fighting off symptoms of things. The problems are getting worse, and your health is deteriorating, and you're getting weaker, and you can't see your way out of this fucking mess, right? And so this happens to so many people. And these motherfuckers are taking money to keep it going with this fucking black-ass wedding ring here, right? This freaking creep. When I saw any mainstream media clip on this, and I just clicked in the sidebar of this video, there's one with Jen Psaki saying lie after lie. They came in hard. Like, this is an issue, like, this is way less important than martial law and the tariffs. Like, they're coming in harder on this thing because they're all the networks all are big Pfizer people. One of the things that Kennedy said was he was good friends with whatever that guy, Roger Ailes of Fox News. Whatever reason they went like on some kind of, they shared a tent when they were younger and camped in some kind of rich guy thing. And they were close friends, even though Kennedy was a liberal Democrat and Roger Ailes was in charge of Fox News. And he put Kennedy on quite a bit on Fox News. And there's a few things that Roger Ailes wanted to let Kennedy do about big pharma stuff. And he was told by Rupert Murdoch, there's no fucking way we can do that because of the big pharma pays so much, of the revenue at Fox. And every time I turn on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, there's commercials for big pharma stuff, and it's old people who use big pharma things, right? And so, this is what happens. Big pharma is these people are owned by big pharma. And you see how upset Elizabeth Warren, she's so upset.
Most Americans are going to be able to get it from their pharmacy for free. Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy for free.
The question is everyone who wants it. That was your promise,
No, I didn't. I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
She's taking $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies. Look at how mad she is. Look at how mad Pocahontas... That was one of the better nicknames for Trump. Remember, she tried to prove that she did have Native American, because she claimed to be Native American and used, that as a way to get, whatever she got, in terms of benefits. And she had like 1/16,000th of a, genetic marker that might mean that there was some Native American. And she was like, see, I am.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying when you said that? Because you are the one who said you would not take them away.
There's a big difference, Senator, between established science and the scientific establishment, which has been co-opted by the pharmaceutical industry.
So you're telling the American people that the American Medical Association, representing hundreds of thousands of people, have been co-opted and that they should not trust their doctors. And everybody is corrupt, but you?
You're the only one, but you? Look at this motherfucker right here. He's such a fucking cliche. Everybody but you?
Been co-opted and that they should not trust their doctors. And everybody is corrupt, but you? Is that what we're looking at? I don't think so. And I think the issue now...
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I think you do know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe President Trump should have asked you, are you a trustworthy person?
Look how
And we
mad
should
he
have
is.
waited for an answer.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Or maybe President Trump should have
Watch
asked
this.
you, are you a trustworthy
Boom.
person? And we should have waited for an answer then. Let's move
I don't
on.
even know what you're talking about. You're talking gibberish.
Mr. Secretary, let me speak slowly and clearly so that you can understand me through my New Mexico accent.
And then give me a chance to
Does
answer.
this help?
Oh, it's like he's pulling out the Latino card.
Then let's move
I don't
on.
even know what you're talking about. You're talking gibberish.
Mr. Secretary, let me speak slowly and clearly so that you can understand me through my New Mexico
And then
accent.
give me a
Oh, you victim piece of shit. Right? Like, that wasn't why he was saying that there. You do speak slowly, right? You.
chance to
Does
answer.
this help? Can you understand me?
You've been over HHS for 7 months now. Have you ever been briefed by CDC's career immunization officials to discuss your concerns?
And by the way, every member of this panel has criticized President Trump
I
and
only have
demonized
three.
him.
Have you ever
Are
been
you
briefed?
complicit in the assassination attempts on President Trump?
Oh, see, that's bullshit stuff. See, that's where Kennedy sucks, right? Like, he's on the right side of the medical thing, at least in the way that we can perceive it. But then he comes out with the bullshit assassination attempt. And, the way he licks Trump's taint at these cabinet meetings and talks about how great he is. I mean, it's just a fucking, he's just a piece of shit like the rest of them. And whatever happens here, I can't imagine Big Pharma is going to let that happen because, they've bought off Trump before. And then the rest of these people here all are on Big Pharma payroll and the mainstream media. So, we'll see. And, if there's a victory here, we'll see. We'll see, what happens with it. But here's Jen Psaki.
But today, Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. showed the country once again that he is not just a raving conspiracy theorist, and he definitely is one of those.
Raving conspiracy theorist. You know, I've said this before. You know, why are they so upset about conspiracy theories? I mean, we know that there's a word conspire. We know people are liars. We know politicians are all corrupt. Most American people know that. The politicians and the news media are untrustworthy. That's why nobody watches this shit anymore. The majority of American people, and they're not, you know, you could call them all conspiracy theorists, know that people conspire, know that people lie, know that politicians lie, and know that the media lies to them, right? And so, you know, almost everybody's a conspiracy theorist. I talk about all the conspiracies that are in fictional TV shows and movies. There's two things I'm going to show you today, two little bits of trailers that are about like apocalyptic shit. And there's so many apocalyptic movies, and the government is always lying in these movies, right? But you know, they pretend like these people are not liars, and all the stuff that they say about Trump, they have a lot of conspiracy theories about Trump. The reason that they've made truthers, I mean, if you looked into the algorithms, the way that they game the algorithms, and they game, you know, people aren't looking for channels like mine, you know, the million or so channels there used to be, or the thousands of channels that used to be like mine. People are looking for that kind of stuff. They're looking for alternative media, and the algorithms are rigged against you finding that, whatever it is, right? You're looking for something, and Google and ChatGPT and all of them know what you're looking for, and they've been told to withhold it. And the reason is truth is kryptonite to this demonic system. And so if truth came out and people could accept the truth, the system would implode because it's built on perception. Like you have to kind of believe that the system can be revived. And even in the truth community, most people are too scared to look at the fact that the system's fucked. And because once you look into the numbers and you look into the depravity and you look into, you know, how human beings are, it's just completely fucked, right? And so that's why they're so hard on conspiracy theorists. Oh, they're crazy conspiracy theorists. Well, conspiracy theorists aren't killing people, killing children in Gaza, and they weren't raping women in Florida with Donald Trump, right, and Epstein. You know, they weren't doing any of these types of things that are, you know, the people with money and power do. They weren't poisoning people with fucking medications that have like horrific side effects. But those you know, those entities are all, you know, aren't going to take down the system, and it's not going to make people lose faith in the system the way that conspiracy theorists and truthers could.
He is also a pathological liar. Take this exchange, for instance.
Just last week, in the days after the tragic shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in my home state of Minnesota, you went on Fox News blaming school shootings on antidepressants.
Yeah, so there's a total connection, right? You know what the side effects of antidepressants are?
You have no evidence of that because you have no evidence of a connection. And you want to talk about...
You're just saying something. You're just making stuff up.
You know, this is what you say, right? Secretary Kennedy, when someone presents you with information that does not fit...
I did not blame that shooting. I have no idea whether... I have no idea, and I never said that. You're making it up. You're twisting. Yeah, you are. You are being dishonest right now.
Okay. So to recap quickly, Minnesota Senator Tina Smith asked RFK Jr. a very reasonable question, which was why he went on TV after a horrific shooting that took place in her state of Minnesota that left 21 people wounded, 2 children dead, and entertained the completely baseless conspiracy that antidepressants and not guns...
It's so bad that she's saying that there's no connection. Like, we know that antidepressants cause people to fucking flip the fuck out. You know, and I've seen it. Like, I've seen the effects of these kind of drugs, because I worked in treatment centers, and they were putting kids on these drugs. And I know all kinds of people who were on something like this, and they had horrific withdrawals and, you know, side effects from these things. We all know SSRIs are brutal. I mean, it's, you know, it causes suicidal tendencies and and depression, and then all these other side effects that could lead. And a lot of times, the shooters are on antidepressants. So to say that there's no evidence, I mean, it's just this is mainstream crap, right? Like just the denial because they're owned by big pharma. And antidepressants. There's a list of in this article. I think they've taken it down. It was from Vox, but I have a screenshot somewhere. I don't know where it is. But there's 200 different medications that cause depression or suicidal tendencies or both. Often both. 200 medications, and many of them are antidepressants. So people come in being depressed from their shitty lifestyle and their being on the internet and all the things these kids grow up with and the fact that they have no future. And, people sense shit, right? Whether they're willing to see it or not, people sense that we're fucked, right? That our system is collapsing. And so, they get depressed, and from all the things, the foods, the screen time, all the shit that's being pushed out there as being our modern day lifestyle. And our system's fucked, like our, the way that our lifestyle is, and especially these kids, each generation, it caters to, or it creates mental illness. And so it's, anybody with half a fucking brain and a level of integrity would say that, yeah, this is part of the problem, right? Whatever these things that they believe happened or not, that if these actions, the drugs are definitely going to have an effect on it, right? Like if you're taking drugs, my daughter committed suicide. My other daughter found out. She read the report, which I couldn't even, but she read the report. And she had LSD and other drugs in her system. She went on a bad trip. And some irresponsible person gave her a gun. She had an unregistered gun. Nobody in their right mind would give my daughter a gun because she was so impulsive. I mean, really impulsive and fucking, but the LSD and these other things, she freaked out. So, I mean, just bad shit, right? Like, so that we know that happens. We know that drugs make people do stupid shit, right? We know alcohol. You're saying that, if somebody is drunk and they kill somebody with a car, alcohol had nothing to do with it, right? Something that impairs your ability and something that causes you emotional, distorts your reality. And so it's silly to say things like that, right? But my point is that they're hammering him more than they would normally anybody else, right?
Culprit behind America's mass shooting problem. And Secretary Kennedy's response was, you just heard him do it repeatedly, was that isn't true. Senator Smith is just making it up. She's being dishonest. Roll the tape, please.
We're launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI drugs and some of the other psychiatric.
They're launching studies. He didn't say he didn't blame it on it. Like they said, I mean, this is not a gotcha moment. This is Jen Psaki. I don't know if her audience can pick it up because they're too fucking stupid. I mean, how stupid you got to be to watch Jen Psaki? But the woman said she blamed it on SSRIs, but now he's saying he's launched studies into it.
Drugs that might be contributing to violence.
Might be contributing.
Okay, that clip that you just saw was 1 week ago tonight on Fox News. And it wasn't just that one reference. Kennedy repeatedly went along with that narrative.
So I've never seen that medicine, but you're saying that if you get it, some of the side effects could be homicide, suicide?
Yeah, fucking 200 medications have suicide, or at least depression and suicide as potential. What the fuck? Like, nobody knows this? You haven't watched the commercials? Like, I show you that all the time, right? There's a lot of medications where suicidal ideation is, or killing yourself is part of the medication, right?
Well, there are black box warnings on some of these psychiatric drugs that warn about in their clinical trials that they saw suicidal and homicidal ideation.
Now, to be abundantly clear, and I've already said this, I'm going to say it again, there is no evidence, none whatsoever, linking antidepressants to mass shootings.
Well, if the company themselves said this is a possibility, and somebody's on them and they're involved in a mass shooting, there's a link. Fucking. But anyway, so you can see how they're going in on.
But still, Secretary Kennedy fanned the flames of that conspiracy repeatedly and then pretended he didn't. And that was far from an isolated moment during the hearing today. I mean, for hours today, RFK Jr. sat in front of the Senate Finance Committee and obfuscated, misled, and brazenly lied about one thing or another. Take this exchange about access to health experts.
How is that going to happen with the Medicaid cuts that are taking place?
There are no cuts to Medicaid.
There are no cuts to Medicaid. Okay, that is how RFK Jr. responded.
Okay, so you can see this is how the media was covering this. Like they're real. She's just a 12-minute segment, and we can, I don't need to go through it. There's a few more exchanges I want to get to here, but like they're just more. If you, whatever bullshit side you're on, whatever your belief is, if you're into your pharmaceuticals, and you like allopathic medicine, and you're worried that Kennedy's going to take it away, and you're dependent on it, and you're lapping up what she's saying, and you're rooting against Kennedy and him at the CDC, and you believe in Fauci and all that stuff, right? Let's say you're that person. Why is the energy so much more from these people, from the senators, and if I went through all the videos that were recommended to me by these people, these shills, Jen Psaki type people, and they're all like long segments and really going in after him. Like that was not, that was what she did was 100% misleading. When you're going to get somebody, you're going to call them a liar. She said that the woman said, he would go back to it. She blamed Kennedy for this thing here.
Just last week, in the days after the tragic shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in my home state of Minnesota, you went on Fox News blaming school shootings on antidepressants.
He didn't do that. Like he said that there might be a link. And there is a link. There's fucking, if those, whatever the fucking, it's all bullshit, right? But like, we know antidepressants cause people to go fucking batshit. Like there's side effects listed on the fucking thing. And you talk to people who have been on them. My ex's brother called her and said that he was on Cymbalta, something like this. And he said, you got to get on it. Because, like, her stuff, like, they came from a fucked up family. And he was really happy to be on Cymbalta. And he said it just made everything better. He was loving it. And then 3 months later, he was having fucking major side effects. It wasn't working like it was supposed to. And then when he went off it, it was horrible. And I've heard that time and time again for people. I bet you guys all have stories of people or yourself that went on antidepressants and maybe they worked in the beginning. When I took this thing called Imitrex for migraine headaches, there was one time it worked so great and it made an artificial serotonin. And it made me so happy, like I felt so good. And I think the first 5 times I took it, it worked. And then it didn't work at all and had really bad side effects, and it was like a diuretic. There's one time I took it and I had to urinate so much it dehydrated the shit out of me. And I felt sick and nauseous and I still got the headache. Like a lot of times these things work for a short period of time and then the side effects kick in and it works, your body's like, this is poison and has some other way of dealing with it, right? But this was 100% disingenuous. He didn't blame it on SSRIs. He said they might be contributing and they're doing studies about that, right? And so, all this victim consciousness they're using, how he's depriving people of their life-saving vaccines and medication, right? And how this guy's like, I'll speak slowly because of my Latino accent. And this woman, these people died in my state and you're blaming it on drugs, and Jen Psaki. And they're fucking, they're, how dare you emotional thing. They're going in so strong on this thing, right? There's more, look at this fucking...
But they can still get it. Everybody can get it. Everybody can get it, Senator.
So look, let's move on. You clearly are taking away vaccines, I've seen the list for what's coming up next, and that is the agenda for the next CDC vaccine panel. And first up is ratifying your COVID actions. Second is hepatitis B is on the agenda. So should Americans expect you to take away hepatitis vaccine access as well, even though you promised not to?
As I said,
Even though you promised not to? Like this like she's some kind of old school marm.
taking vaccines away from anybody.
Okay, same answer, right? You're just going to deny that when people can't get access, that you're not taking it away. Then let me ask you, is that the same game you're going to play with me?
You want me to recommend every product?
He's really big into vaccines.
Menarez, was approved by Republicans. She wrote an Dr. Menarez, was approved by Republicans. She wrote an op-ed today in the Wall Street Journal, which I've just put in the record, and I quote her. She said, "I was told to pre-approve the recommendations of a vaccine advisory panel newly filled with people who have publicly expressed anti-vaccine rhetoric. Did you, in fact, do what Director Menarez said you did, which is tell her to just go along with vaccine recommendations, even if she didn't think such recommendations?"
They got rid of the, here it is. They didn't. But they've changed their player.
Aligned with scientific evidence. That is
No, I did not.
That's a yes or no. So you have an opportunity
He said he did not. That's a no.
to call her a liar if you say that you didn't do it, but I'd like to see you respond to this.
No, I did not say that to her. And I never had a private meeting with her. So there are witnesses to every meeting that we have, and all of those witnesses will say, I never said that.
So she's lying today to the American people in the Wall Street Journal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dr.
Boom. This is, like they're just all very passionate about this. Here's a little bit more of Bernie. This thing where he said, he brings up Trump's fake assassination attempt, which, discludes him from ever being considered a truther or anything like that. But it's all victim consciousness shit. They're all fucking emotionally manipulative. Poor me, poor them, poor everybody. This is you. How dare you? This kind of sanctimonious bullshit. It's icky to watch. Like whenever you watch these things, you can only take it in small doses.
I just want to pick up on Senator Warren's point. Are you telling us that the former head of CDC went to you?
So I think she's from New Hampshire. She fucked him. So she stole his platform. Bernie Sanders had a, very popular platform. And his platform, the people who would support Bernie Sanders would be, for the most part, into alternative medicine. She came along and stole his platform. And there's people who didn't like him, so she was just copying his platform. So they were the two sort of socialist, liberal people. She came in as an anti-banker person and then took a shit ton of banker money. Right? Like she was like all talking about the big banks, and then she took a bunch of big bank money. And so they were pretending to be real liberals. At least, Bernie more so is more legitimate than she is. But she stole his fucking platform. And then when they rigged it against him for the second time, Klobuchar and Buttigieg, who are more like Biden centrists, withdrew and supported Biden. But she stayed in to take away his votes so they could rig it for Biden, even though Biden didn't really have much enthusiasm behind him. And that's why Biden was the nominee. So she totally fucked him. But he's up there with her because they're both getting fucking big pharma money, right? Like they're enemies and, they political enemies. And she's done a lot more damage to him than fucking RFK Jr. and his policies have. But he's, they got their big pharma shills.
You asked her, are you a trustworthy person? And she said, no, I am not a trustworthy person.
She didn't say, no, I'm not a trustworthy person. She said, no.
Look at how fucking bitchy he is. Right?
I'm giving a quote. And I asked her
No, 1 second. And you're also repeating now that she is a liar, correct? What she wrote in the Wall Street Journal.
If she wrote that I fired her because she refused to sign on in advance for the ACIP committee, no, that's not accurate.
All right, so you're calling her a liar, and I look forward to her coming before the Help Committee, maybe this committee as well. All right, Mr.
Nice cough there, Bernie.
the Secretary, I've got a bunch of questions. Appreciate brevity. in
Where'd
answering
Lizzie
it.
go? Where's Pocahontas?
So-called beautiful bill threw 15 million Americans off of health care, substantially raised premiums, and is going to have a terrible impact on nursing homes, community health centers, rural hospitals all over America. Very briefly, is that really making America healthy again?
It's going to have it's going to be the biggest infusion of federal dollars into rural health care in American history.
Yeah, you know why? Because you're cutting $150 billion for rural hospitals, you're putting $50 billion back. That's not an infusion. That's a loss of $100 billion. All right, next question. President Trump, who I don't usually agree with, called COVID vaccines, quote, one of the greatest miracles in the history of modern-day medicine that saved tens of millions of lives worldwide. Scientific community agrees with Trump.
You really go with that?
Lancet study found that it prevented almost 20 million deaths during their first year.
20 million deaths. There was going to be 20 million more dead people. But COVID vaccines, the miracle vaccines, they stopped that.
Of use. Secretary Kennedy, are President Trump and the medical community right, or do you still believe that the COVID vaccine was, quote, the deadliest vaccine ever made?
No, first of all, I didn't say that. Oh, I said that in terms of affairs reports a while ago. I said today, I think that President Trump should get the Nobel Prize.
So who's right? Is Trump in the medical?
So he should get the Nobel Peace Prize for fucking that piece of shit vaccine. So you can't be both. You can't be both things. Like that's why Kennedy's a complete piece of shit, right? Like you just got to tell the truth, or you're not. You tell the truth, right? You can't say that these things are harmful. You read the VAERS report, but he wants Trump to get the Nobel Peace Prize for that fucking shitty vaccine.
Community right, or are you right?
President Trump did an extraordinary piece of leadership.
Is he right or wrong? Did COVID save millions of lives?
As I said, he got
He meant to say COVID vaccines, but he said COVID.
Americans back to work. At that time, that particular vaccine was perfectly matched to the virus that was circulating then. And I have no idea how many lives it saved, but it saved quite a few.
Okay, Jesus Christ, bro. So this was the front page of Huffington Post yesterday before I even started seeing all the fallout. They're all like, it's hilarious because they're really bad actors. And when they try to make themselves angry, the senators and the whole thing. And, Kennedy's a piece of shit with that, kissing Trump's ass, and just the whole thing's a joke. Quack in the hot seat, sir, you're a charlatan. This whole stupid thing. I would expect that the American people know they got fucked by COVID. Like, we really, not just physically and not just by the vax, but by the whole thing. The shutting down the economy and all of it. Like, it was just a fucking, and I don't know. Like, there's no way to get polling data. I don't know how many people know. Some people might suspect some things or whatever. But either way, they did. Like, they fucked this thing up. Most of the shit that they said turned out to be provably false, if you look into it at all. Promises were made, demonization of the... I was going to put my compilation in here, but I'm not going to. I showed the compilation so much of them demonizing anti-vaxxers and the whole thing. But, people are just dead inside, don't care, aren't interested, not curious. And, these guys just continue their lies. They've learned that you don't have to, you don't have to appeal to smart people anymore. You don't have to appeal to conscious people anymore. You just have to appeal to dumb fucks. Like, everyone realizes that. Just keep on talking to dumb fucks, and that's their whole strategy. So anyways, let's go into this post-apocalyptic stuff with these movies here. Okay, so there's two movies that I saw trailers of yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't know what it was. House of Dynamite.
Everyone you love, everyone you know.
Okay, so this one, Netflix sucks at copywriting. But this is about nuclear war, the onset of nuclear war. And they go to DEF CON 2.
Of a fraction.
They go to DEFCON 2, and then things start happening, and then, other things start happening.
We make our stand.
And then they're going to nuclear war. Which, is we're in the process of that. There's something that happened with Venezuela buzzing a couple American ships.
Responsibility.
She's crying. And then this here happens, and then House of Dynamite. And then DEFCON 4 comes in here somewhere. Anyways, so they are talking about, there's a whole TV show or movie here about nuclear war and the onset of it. So this one's called Afterburn.
When the solar flare hit, we lost our humanity.
Okay, so there's a guy named Matt Stein, and he's a former MIT, I guess, professor, graduate, who postulated, he had a book called 100 Chernobyls. And what he was saying there is that due to an EMP or a solar flare, that it would wipe out our power grid, and you had all these nuclear power plants that need to cool the rods, and they have about a week's worth of electricity. And so if the electrical grid went down, they would have a week's worth of electricity to cool the nuclear rods before they went, China syndrome and create a nuclear explosion. And there would be hundreds of these plants doing it all at once in America and across the globe. Now, in Whispers of the Brighter World, it talks about the reversal of the poles. North becomes south and south becomes north. And I watched a documentary about this maybe 15 years ago. And it was pretty clear that this happens. And this is something that nobody pretty much knew about back then. And nobody cared about. All this stuff about global warming, these other things. That they could see from Arctic ice that every 200,000 years, the poles reverse themselves. North becomes south and south becomes north. And so all of your, people's compasses, and who knows what that does to any kind of electrical grid. But they said one of the signs was when people started seeing the aurora borealis in places other than, the northern lights, if you start seeing it in the the middle part of the country and the world, instead of being at the poles or being at the North Pole, you start seeing it in Florida and places where people have seen it. A lot of people who watch these videos have seen northern lights in their region, and so that's one of the signs this is happening. And when that happens, the magnetic field comes down, and the magnetic field protects us from solar flares. And so the solar flares come down, and the magnetic field comes down, a solar flare hits the world, and then it goes across the power grid, and it shorts out all these big transfer stations, and a lot of these things are custom fit. It's a whole thing, and there's one company that makes these big transformers, and they couldn't make enough to rebuild the whole world's electrical grid. And it's already happened. A solar flare hit in Africa, and the energy went through the electrical wires and shorted out all these big power stations. And they, it was a smaller version of, what could be a mass situation. And so this is a realistic possibility that is, been prophesized in, the Whispers of the Brighter World, and then scientific backing. And then, of course, World War III with the, nuclear power that can also create some kind of issues with the magnetic field and the pole shifting. And so, nuclear war. So, it is interesting that these movies came out basically at the same time, the trailers. I saw them at the same day. And there's a big event predicted in the Whispers of the Brighter World at the end of this year, the beginning of next year, which, it seems totally plausible, and even more so now, but it's hard to believe because it's nothing we've experienced before. But, there's going to be knockout blows that are coming. we can delude ourselves and lie about our debt and, just kick the can down the road. But eventually, I said I just watched this Indian TV show, and it was about Pakistan and India vying for nuclear weapons, like who would be first. And they met with Kissinger, and Kissinger said the best we could hope for is some future generation has to pay for our mistake of making nuclear weapons. So that's all like out there, and it's all inevitable. And so, you talk about these things where they accuse people of being conspiracy theorists, but it's all the signs are there that our civilization's collapsing, and it starts with people. Like if your people are getting worse, and they're getting more sickly, they're getting more entitled, they're getting more unnatural. You're going in the wrong direction. You're getting stupider and more more suicidal and more abusive and self-destructive, which is, these are all signs of, a civilization in collapse, and also a species that's overpopulated in these dense, overpopulated cities and things. And, all these things start to happen. There's a complete, breakdown of the human being. And when that happens, everything else, goes along with it. And people are just fucked. Like these younger generation, they just get weaker and weaker. We're weaker than our ancestors. We're going in the wrong direction. So that's the first sign. And then all the other signs that are there, and a collapsing economy, collapsing infrastructure. The cement is like glue. It has its maximum bond, right? Things that bond on a molecular level and form something solid, something adhesive. You know how if you glue your fingers together, which I'm not recommending, with super glue, I used a razor blade when I did it when I was a kid to cut the glue bond, which also I'm not recommending. I just cut the glue part, but it got some of my skin. It's, but it sticks to your skin for you can't get it off. You scrub it, you do whatever. But after a while, it just releases because super glue has a short bonding period. If you glue something with super glue, it works great for 3 days, and then it starts to break down, weaken. And so, these quick drying glues. And so some things bond for a long time. Cement is around 100 years. And then the bonds start breaking. So cement's great. It makes like a stone-like surface, substance. But then, after 100 years or so, it starts to unbond. The bonds start breaking. You can see this. We have a lot of buildings that are in the 100-year range, like the majority of buildings in America. So they have to be restored. There's a whole process. It's a lot harder than building it from scratch. And you have a lot of places like that all over the world that the infrastructure is just breaking down, like everything, and people are, just not into it. Like we don't have the money and the resources and the whatever. I mean, globally, to repair these things and keep them going. So you're going to have these kind of collapses that things are just aging out. And anyways, that's what's up, right? That's what's happening in the world right now. And so, so I thought these movies, the trailers were interesting. Okay, so this is the one from I was talking about in two different ways in the thing I was just saying. Wednesday, February 28th, 2001, 9 a.m. In a quarter of a century, so that's 2026, give or take. It's like in about a quarter of a century. In a quarter of a century, the Earth will experience a major turbulence. Now, if it's to the date, it'll be February 28th, the last day of February in 2026. In a quarter of a century, the Earth will experience a major turbulence that will be the beginning of a cycle which Earthmen will find very difficult to go through. Fire will literally beat down on certain parts of the world, whereas torrents of rain will pour over others. Cataclysms will follow one another for many long years, keeping men frightened. Many will turn toward a supreme God, beseeching his forgiveness for more and more aberrant behaviors, as well as for the maltreatment imposed on their nourishing mother, the earth. The failure to respect the elements will lead to the effects generating terror among the population at the end of the century. So that would be the next 75 years. In future ages, the present layout of the continents will be shattered, maps will need revising, Yet the creatures inhabiting this planet will have more than enough to do in order to survive, rather than dealing with those details. Adam, ATOM, will turn against mankind, who will not have been able to harness it, and its lightning power will be devastating. The time for punishment for such a conceit will take place as hard as it can, and man praying for his ancestors' glaring mistakes will suffer without having any control over the situation. This transformation of this planet must go through all these cataclysms in order to be effectively completed. Babaji. He was the second master of the system who had passed away in 1983. So he's in spirit form. You know, this French woman who freaked the fuck out because she wasn't a conspiracy theorist and, you know, whatever. She wasn't a truther. And she got these messages and, like, you know, she freaked out. But they're all in a section called Prophecies, and then there's other ones that weren't in that section of the first book that was completed. But, you know, there's these other prophecies, and it talks about how nuclear war will wreck this planet. And, you know, it's either going to happen or it's not. Either these things are true or they're not. But if they are true, then this is, you know, where we're headed. And, you know, the majority of people who did the meditation, and they loved the masters, they read the books, and they were into it. They rejected and they like whispers. They loved the whispers messages. But they found some way to rationalize this and not prepare. Like I was stunning to me that they believed in the system. So I don't expect you guys to buy into it, because why would you? Like, it doesn't, you know. I mean, other than what you can see now, it's like it looks a lot like it's heading in this direction a lot more now than it did when this came out in 2005. This message was from 2001. And so this book wasn't published until 4 years later. And then, you know, there's still 25 years of time, or 20 years of time. And most people blew it off. And, you know, I talked to people. I was pretty stunned that they weren't taking these things seriously, because people don't. And so it's going to happen when it happens. And then this idea of beseeching God is critical. Like, are people going to realize that we fucked up and, like, we need to do better? And that sort of attitude is pervading in the human culture, and that people are willing to go up and change and not fucking be dumb fucks anymore, right? And so that's, you know, that's what's on the table here. And whether it happens or not, you know, we'll see. You know, whether people rise up to a higher level or not, you know, it's, you know, that's still, I mean, maybe it's already happened in some, you know, in the future that we can't see yet, but we'll see what happens. You know, it looks pretty dismal now, but, you know, who knows what people will do in the future when they're, you know, under suffering the consequences of their, you know, collective actions. Anyways, let's move on to the other things here. There's a little more to this I should have.
Lost our humanity. Solar flare hit. We lost our humanity. You saw what people did to the world burn. The monsters they became. If we're to rebuild, we have to hold on to every masterpiece.
So, you know, that's where they're going with this. Kind of silly. They're holding on to masterpieces when, you know, it's just fucking stupid. But, you know, what has to happen, which I've talked about so much, is that people have to realize that they have disconnected themselves from God, and let their egos, we let our collective egos and our individual egos run amok, making bad choices, making anti-divine choices, and beseeching God and begging God for, you know, well, let me just go ahead and read that whispers, beseeching God. And, you know, this is what has to happen here. This video is essentially done. I have some more stuff on the vaccine that I'm not even going to put in this, maybe tomorrow. I've had this clip somebody sent me a while back. I just haven't got around to it. But anyways, I promised to shit on Don Lemon a little bit. So here he is. So he went and talked to all these lawmakers. They all agreed to talk to him, which is bizarre. You know, I mean, he has somewhat of a, whatever.
You have some unsuspecting allies here. You know, you've got Nancy Mace, You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert.
They all look so ghoulish.
How do you feel about that?
Well, you know, this demonstrates the importance of having women in public office along with men, because right now it's only been Republican women who've been willing to sign the discharge petition to make sure that we get the complete Epstein files out.
Okay, so first of all, everything's just so I'm just, the bullshit of all of it, right? So the Democrats were pushing back against Epstein. That was for right-wing conspiracy theorists and crazy Trumpers and QBs, and, there was just not a Democratic issue. I don't remember one Democratic senator or any of these people pushing for the release of the Epstein files. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, some of these other dopes, were all about it since the beginning. So this is their issue. They've been consistent with what they believe. It's the Democrats realizing they can shit on Trump and it's not going to come back to haunt Mossad. These other things they're worried about. And they can nip that in the bud. And even if it does, that'll hurt Trump more than it hurts the Democrats, because the Democrats are giving a little bit of pushback on Israel and these things. So the Democrats have been won over. But these other, these people they mentioned, it's their issue. It's always been their issue. So these guys have gone over and they're finally agreeing with these other people that they always criticize, these dumbasses. And, that's just why politics it just sucks. Because it's all performative. And him saying that the men won't come over, but that guy Massey's a part of it. And so, that's not true. He's a Republican, I think. So, but what he's saying here is the women are more likely to break ranks, which is true. That's why you don't have women in the military, because, men understand hierarchies better than women. And so, Trump is ruling with an iron fist the Republican Party, and people just don't question him. But, some of the women are breaking from him in this one issue. But either way, it's just so icky. Everything's just so funny. It's just the lies, right? I'm going to show this. Let me go to the Don Lemon's thing here. Okay, so Don Lemons wrote something about, or to, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think it's about, because he likes to do that. And I want to show you this meme first, because it'll make sense in a second.
Person who writes everything that comes out of my mouth. Not everything, but, the things that make sense. Susan Lay is great.
So that was right before he got demoted to the morning show, and he was thanking Susan Lay, who worked for him. And, he said she wrote his stuff, right? So he worked with a writer, like a ghostwriter. Probably the writer didn't. He's not a creative person. He doesn't say things that are bumper sticker worthy when he's talking. People will quote me back to my, quote things I say that I can, I'm not even aware of. That would make a good T-shirt or whatever, right? People who say things that, even unintentionally, that are quotable. And, there's people out there who do that. Lots of people on the internet. Don Lemons isn't one of them. He's not insightful. He doesn't say, he's just a, by the book, but not even really understanding the book. He's by the book. He doesn't understand. So let's get into it here.
So it's been one interesting week, especially when you consider one of the interactions I had with one of the lawmakers, and that's Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm in Washington. I'm talking to lawmakers and people trying to get a pulse of what's happening in the country. They have 30 days to fund the government. There's the Epstein thing that's going on with all of the survivors who are meeting. And so I wanted to get some answers from Marjorie Taylor Greene. And so I wanted to write about my...
So those answers would have done what, John? What would those answers would have been? It's just political talk. There's nothing, there's things that pop and you can get a viral moment, and you kind of got a viral moment by her being whatever she was, and which is what you were going for. You much prefer that if you're smart, and you're not, so I don't know. But, there's none of this stuff matters. He's talking to these lawmakers. It's all bullshit, right? They have no fucking plan to stop Trump. It's just people bullshitting, fucking... It's wasted words. It's wasted time.
Interaction with her, because I think that you'll find it interesting, and just how sometimes you don't know who may become an ally in certain situations, but not permanent allies, okay? So this is what I wrote on Substack, and you can find it on my Substack. But
Marjorie Taylor Greene may not want my allyship, but I value hers. Now, he's already admitted that this woman, Susan Lay, wrote most of his stuff on his show. Then when he would go off on his own and say shit, like a lot of it was like, what do you, like it didn't make sense. It wasn't just stupid. And you see it here. He just says things that like, it's not coherent thoughts. And it's not like he's got a grasp of this, what he's even saying. Where he said sharp as she's not the sharpest knife. Like he was talking about her when she mispronounced one of these words. Whatever it was. And he said that she's not the sharpest knife in the block. She's not the sharpest bowling ball. And he goes, well, that doesn't make sense. At least he realizes it. But oftentimes he says something that doesn't make sense at all. Like that's not even a good example. Like he's trying to articulate some sort of concept, and it's not. It's like it's goofy. It's not like even you can't even understand what the fuck he's saying, right? And so how is he? He's writing on Substack because I think he wants to be seen as a journalist, and maybe there's some advantage. ChatGTP recommended I do this, but I don't have the time for this bullshit, right? When I could just talk rather than have to write something. Which takes a lot more time, and then, whatever.
it's about Marjorie Taylor Greene. It says, she may not want my allyship, but I value hers. Shocking, right? Mark your calendars.
Boom, it's so shocking.
Taylor Greene.
You're not an ally. You're a person that says shit on the internet to a bunch of people who aren't going to do anything about it, right? Like, they're actually trying to force something that's not going to have any effect. I mean, it's all limp-dick, impotent stuff, that's not going to have any, it's not going to make a difference. But they're trying to force these documents out. You're just talking about shit like the rest of us to a bunch of people who are just sitting around listening to it. It's not going to change anything, right?
Doesn't care for me. That much was clear this morning.
Doesn't care for me. That much is clear this morning.
Or the other morning when I approached her in our nation's capital, she looked at me the way that she looks at the liberal media that she rails against all the time, as if I were some intruder in her story, a villain in her script perhaps. But here's the part that you may not expect. I actually value what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. And
you already fucking said this. Why are you writing it down? Like, of course she did. You were just mocking her the other day about her mispronouncing a word. You said she was stupid. And then you covered her quite a bit with Laura Loomer, and you were giddy that they were having a MAGA meltdown.
Did this week, even though she may not understand that because she, likes to make enemies and she's combative. Now, I want to be very plain about this. Marjorie Taylor Greene has built a career on conspiracy and cruelty. She has mocked survivors of school shootings. That is not good. She has trafficked in the ugliest type of bigotry possible. She has lied about me personally this week, claiming that I'm a misogynist. Nothing can be further from the truth. She doesn't know my story. She doesn't know what has happened to me. She claimed that I stormed the Capitol when I did nothing more than stand calmly in the Rayburn building to ask when she'd be available to speak to a group of Americans that I was covering as a journalist. So, as my head writer, Peter, always says, breaking news, fork found in kitchen.
Okay, so this is really bad, right? But this is what I want to talk about here. And I was making reference to it before all this other news bullshit. And so, when I was talking about this with Jen Psaki either today or yesterday, I think today, maybe it was yesterday. But this idea that conspiracy theorists are somehow evil, or the worst of the worst. But, he's saying these things. I think he's going to talk more about here. Let me see if he's...
Perhaps you'd not be so surprised about Marjorie Taylor Greene not having her facts straight. And yet...
Not having her facts straight. That was the thing. This thing about him being a misogynist, I think that's a little bit overboard, but he has a problem with women. And he had a problem working with women. And you could tell that he thought more of himself, and I think he thinks more of his male colleagues than he does his female colleagues. Like he's not, he's a gay dude who definitely has some kind of an attitude towards women. Whatever it is. Like they're less than. Like he has something. I wouldn't call it misogynistic because that's a a more powerful word. I don't think he's that. But it's based in definition. So the majority, like, it's not a factual thing. Being a misogynist or not is not factual. I mean, only if you say I am a misogynist, if you claim to be a misogynist. But nobody says that they're racist, right? They just think even the most prejudicial people, even the hate group people, don't think of themselves as racist. They just think that they're right. Right? Like he thinks he's right about women, whatever his attitude is, and whatever disdain he had for women, and he showed that in his morning show, which is partially why he got fired. But it's all subjective bullshit, right? When he says facts straight, there is no facts in terms of mainstream media because, the science isn't really factual science because it's not done in the proper scientific method, and it's influenced by money and agendas and power, and all the rest of it is just made up bullshit. There's very few actual facts out there. I've said that before. It's all subjective things. Calling her a crazy conspiracy theorist, what if she's right about all these things that she's talking about? And even if she is, she's still fucking dope. And so, like, this is what sucks about all this. People are oblivious to their own bullshit, right? Like, he thinks he has the facts, although he pitches conspiracy theories all the time about Trump and Trumpers and the rest of it. And, like, not being able to see her side of her point of view. You guys busted into her office uninvited. Like, if somebody just showed up right now, you're in the middle of your show, and some person, like someone, who's like a right-wing truther who's doesn't have as big a show as you do, and like you're not even, you're not on CNN anymore. Your viewership is down. But let's say someone walked right into his place right now and demanded an interview, and he's in the middle of his show, right? It's, you make appointments as a journalist, and you can stand outside and talk to people as they're walking, and maybe they'll talk to you or not. But it's an aggressive, especially when somebody like you has said, you've talked shit about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, don't pretend you were friends and all of a sudden you wanted her allyship. It's just silly shit, right? It's like the bullshit is just, I get more and more tired of listening to these fucking dopes talk and lie and, make shit up. And it's just remedial stuff for dumb people. Never any sort of self-accountability or, being like, I'm going to work to be honest. I'm going to be fair and balanced. I'm going to be honest about what other people believe. I'm just not going to turn everybody else I don't like to into some sort of straw man argument where I make up their reality and I do it in a disingenuous way, right? Like, it's just, there's enough to criticize if you just be truthful. You can still mock people if you're being truthful. You have to make shit up.
Though, when Greene stepped onto that bipartisan stage the other morning and she demanded a full release of Jeffrey Epstein's client list, well, when she pledged to name every predator, even those with power, even those in her own party, I felt something that was quite frankly unexpected. I felt a respect, not admiration for the woman, not absolution of her sins at all, but respect.
Who the fuck are you to absolve someone for their sins or not? Like, he's just like totally clueless. I mean, there's a lot of people in the truth community and all over the place that don't realize what a piece of shit they are. Like, you have to be working on yourself. You have to see the things that you do wrong. Even like wasting, the biggest one's wasting energy. In the Sajmarg system of, the third master of the system said that one of the definitions of morality is the proper utilization of your resources, which is brilliant. People are wasting time, which is your biggest resource. We all do it. We waste time. We spend our time doing stupid shit, and oftentimes things that are making us more unhealthy and working against our better interests. That's going to come back and bite us. So we all have these things that we do, and then we have other things that we can improve. And you can't make anybody else improve, but you can make yourself improve. You can work to improve yourself, and the biggest thing is to connect to the divinity within you. That's why I talk about it all the time. It fucking, it's the most important thing. If people don't have it, then you're spinning your wheels, because it's is a guiding light to the person that you're supposed to be, the person that you're supposed to become. And without divinity, you can't reach that goal. You can't become that person because you need a relationship with your soul and the rest of it. But I talk about this all the time. Sure, okay. There's a number of things like that. But the majority of people just look at other people going, oh, they have to improve. And never think about self-improvement, right? It just, who gives a shit? You're not there to fucking judge her. We can all mock people. We can make fun of their bullshit. But absolution, you're not there to absolve her. That's between her and fucking God. Like, if you were a fan of hers for one day because she did something, which is all of a sudden something you care about, she's been on this since the beginning. This has been her issue, and it's still worthless. It's not going to do shit. This thing is never going to give you any kind of real anything, right? There might be one or two scapegoats that go to jail or something or canceled. But for the most part, not. Make sure you subscribe to Substack.
Respect for that moment, because survivors of Epstein's network have lived for decades with silence hanging over them like a second crime. They have watched presidents and princes and billionaires sleep soundly while for decades they have watched that. And while they have gotten no absolution, no resolution, no nothing, it's just sad. They have watched these people sleep soundly while they carry the weight of what has been done to them. And that is completely unfair. And this week, for once, someone with power said enough. They said that I believe that takes courage. I believe it takes real courage. The kind that really costs something, because
he's only partially reading his own bullshit. And so, it's pathetic. Don Lemon's pathetic. He's the worst of the worst, but he's just, he's a company man. Like, he's a part of this whole thing, this mindset, and he can't break free from it because he doesn't even understand this limited. He sucks. He's a dope within his own limited CNN mindset. Like, other people at CNN know that they're bullshitting and know that they're censoring themselves, and no, he just doesn't know. And he just, but all this stuff that he talks about, like in terms of the things that he says that we do, or Marjorie Taylor Greene does, or any of these people who are against the mainstream narrative, he's trying to be one of those guys, but still back the stupidest of the stupid narratives. And some of that stuff's like Joe Biden was fucking obviously senile. Like, you have to come out and say, yeah, I was fucking, I was a lying piece of shit back when I was on CNN. Like, that's the first thing you have to do. Admit that you said things and, you went along with things that you either were against or you didn't understand, or you just blindly followed people, which makes you worthless today because, you didn't do this on your own. You were cast out. Like, you're a throwaway from CNN. They gave you $20 million to go away. And now you're on the internet pretending that you're no longer a part of the legacy media, in part because they have a non-compete, and you've developed a nice little audience for yourself of dumbasses that follow you that you can turn into some sort of Pat McAfee type of deal with MSNBC or one of these other smaller networks. Anyways, like, it's just the stupidity and the lying and the lying to yourself and just these bullshit fucking talking points and all of it. It's just so fucking icky. Like, it just never stops, and it's the bullshit never stops. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.